Hello again, YouTube peoples. So I manifested you. That is the title of the third episode of 90 Day Fiance. And we meet a new couple that we're going to be talking about today. And we get some light updates on things. So I have thoughts, of course, and I want to share these thoughts with y'all. And I would love to hear your comments below in the ever so familiar comment section. So let's get into it. Welcome back to Socially Single. Of course, I am V. And if this is your first time, I appreciate you giving me a chance to see if I pique your interest. And if you're coming back, I'm so happy you like me. So let's talk about, of course, these couples landing a fiance. I'm reviewing the season. And I think this time, I'm going to probably separate this into different parts and then not necessarily by couples. Because if we're being honest, if you watched the episode, it was definitely like they did not really edit it, in my opinion, correctly. Like we kind of did not need to see a couple and we need to see more of other couples and they didn't really finish it out. So I hate that it kind of felt a little bit more like a hodgepodge or filler episode. So that's what they gave us, of course, and we're going to go into it. And that's why I'm like, I don't know if I want to necessarily go into a full review per couple, because of course I did my introductions of those couples recently. So the first couple I want to get into is the new couple. We're going to be talking about Paula and Thomas. And so Paula is from São Paulo, Brazil, and she's 41 years old. And we have Thomas, who is 31 years old. Sounds like he was originally from North Carolina, but he now lives in Long Beach, California. And so in these two were introduced to us in this episode. So let's talk a little bit about them, because I'm going to be honest. This is the couple that I feel like that 90 Day Fiance was made for. Like, this is I'm getting the impression this is a very authentic couple. And pretty much their story and what we're seeing from them is definitely more on the believable side. So I'm going to talk about what I mean by that, of course, and we'll go from there. So first off, we have Thomas, who is from, of course, the States, and he met Paula when she was visiting the LA on a vacation, and he had just moved to LA from North Carolina, and they both decided to go to some beach volleyball class as beginners, and they were meeting and hit it off. And so, but they didn't hit it off as a couple. They actually hit it off as friends. And you can tell this is definitely some time ago. And this is no offense, because I'm about to mention their bodies, and my body is not what it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Now that I looked at those pictures. However, of course, we see that they're both really fit, and they both have some nice bodies, and they kept in touch, and they became long distance friends, aka pen pals. And we see that she's like, hey, we're gonna find you a girlfriend. She's gonna be Brazilian, and pretty much you could kind of tell that they were just getting to know each other over the years. And then he was like, is there something here? Is there some feelings here? And he decided that after having years of this friendship where, he has hung out with her, she has hung out with him, as they have been going back and forth, that Thomas got to the point where he was like, I'm gonna go pursue her. Like, I need to know, is this real? Is this not real? Like, what are we doing here? And he would have had to have been 29 at this point, which is, men kind of go through this phase, we call it the pre-life crisis, like in our late 20s of it. And so you kind of began thinking a little bit about how, now that you've had maybe some fun and you taken some risks in your 20s, in your 30s, you're like, I kind of want to see what I'm working towards now. I'm getting a little bit more serious about things. And we don't know a whole lot about Thomas, so I'm totally bringing that out of my booty hole. But I am like, hey, that makes sense. He was 29. He's been probably been on some dates. Things have not worked out. And so he goes over back to Brazil, and he's like, hey, Paula, is there something between us? Like, I'm feeling it. Are you feeling it? Are you seeing what I'm putting down without telling you that I'm putting it down, but I'm not really putting it down, but I'm giving you like a hint, And she was like, I got a boyfriend. You must have forgot. So, however, it was shortly thereafter that she decided to leave her boyfriend and decided to say, hey, let's figure out if this is going to be a thing between us. And she started dating good old Thomas. And so they have been engaged for 2 years. And we start off, which is not typical for 90 Fiance, but they actually start off meeting the immigrants versus the American. So we kind of really met her first, but I wanted to start with Thomas first because we learned that Paula has her own piercing business. So we see her doing like piercing in her ears and in the people's ears and that kind of stuff. She has quite a few in her own ear. I wish I had my earrings in. I only have one piercing, but I love piercings. So I hope at some point I can get some more piercings. However, I thought it was very, very cool when we saw like her ears. She had maybe 10 or 12 different piercings. If I get a picture of her, I'll put it in here for y'all to see. And so it was really good seeing that she seems to be her own self-made woman. She calls herself a boss. And we really understood at this point that, hey, he met her in the States. It wasn't the opposite where he took a boys trip to Brazil and he met her there. So this is where I'm kind of seeing it. This seems to be a little bit more of a nice, authentic story that we don't typically get these days, especially when I name Fiancé out of production. The weird thing that we are introduced to when it comes to Paula is that she likes to manifest things that she wants in her life. And she does it by buying these super tiny little things that she wants. So, for example, she wanted a nice kitchen and she thought about a kitchen she wanted in her next apartment. And she bought some tiny salt pepper shakers and she manifested the kitchen she wanted. She manifested the couch she wanted. She manifests things in her life and she does it through way of tiny things. And so for her, it's the universe is calling out. Is choosing these things for her, and she's being true to what she really wants. And though I've never heard of or seen anything like that before, and me being a bigger guy, 6'5", I hate very small things. They scare me. However, I it clearly has worked for her. We're being honest. She has her own business. She got her nice corner unit. Apartment or condo in Brazil. She, Paula, you gained some weight since you met Thomas back in LA years ago, but she looked good. She's 41 years old. She seems pretty established, and we're always introduced to a certain level, oh, these people, people from other countries are just so poor. They don't have certain things. Not all the time, but sometimes that's the impression, right? And I don't know if the fiance doesn't always want to get into the finances of things, so as I wish they would do, because this is the learning channel, apparently. So, however, she seems to be really self-made. So, any narrative of her coming over here for a green card or he's having to do all that, we have not been given or provided any information that supports that theory. I'm thinking this is going to probably be, in some people's eyes, probably a boring couple. What's the drama between these two? What are the issues? And we do get introduced to the fact of, while she believes in manifestations and she likes to, of course, and essentially I see that as her working hard to achieve the goals she wants to achieve, and if it's returning things, cool. He does not believe that. So Thomas, we don't know what he does in LA. However, he has this studio apartment, or maybe even an alcove, but I think it's a studio apartment in Long Beach, California. He calls it minimalist living. I call it cheap. However, I'm sure it was his decision to live that way. I'm gonna put some pictures of his apartment up, because him calling that a table, the little camper table that you can travel with, when you're camping and easy to put up on the beach, That's not a real dining room table. Him sitting on some bricks, I thought that was all foo la la. However, I'm gonna be honest, Thomas is white enough as that white guy to probably do that. Let's just be honest. He looks like the white guy who probably like, hey, this is just good. You know, I don't need a couch. My bed is a couch. And I like laying down anyway. Just say, you know what? Thomas could probably afford it, if I'm being honest. He's that guy, right? He comes off as that guy. And so I think this is who he really is. If I'm being as weird as it all looked, they want to call it minimalist. Sure. She isn't, right? And so I'm looking forward. I wish you kind of got more of their story. We see that she did make it to the States. You know, I love a good, if you don't know, I think this show is all about the meeting at the airport and the weddings. If we get a wedding. So I love to see when they kind of met at the airport, and they had, in my opinion, a very genuine, authentic meeting. They both cried. I love to see them cry. And he had the flag for her, of course, and was speaking in Spanish about welcome to the U.S. And he even cooked for her. And I will admit, Thomas looked like one of those guys. No offense to nobody, but you know, he do like one of those guys who don't know what seasoning is when he cooking. But he had made some seasonings about go grab your wife. It looked like crushed red pepper and paprika to me. But who am I? I don't know. The point is, he did use some seasoning. She's a vegan. We find out, and he is not vegan. He definitely likes his meat. And you know, I gotta be honest, Thomas got a little, you know, he has a nice little body on him. He got some thighs. You know, Thomas got some thighs on him. And so it's interesting because he made her a tofu dish so she can have something to eat when she arrived. And I thought that was very, very cool of him to kind of make something for her, at least attempt to. He put the beans in a mug. And you know what? That is the kind of thoughtful stuff that I would... He's a little bit dorky, right? And I like it. I like that it makes me feel like a little more of an authentic element. I'm not taking this as foolishness or production shenanigans. Like, I really thought that he was like, yeah, I don't want to get cold, so I can put this in the cup and she can at least have that. Did he think everything through? No. But to me, this is the fun part of why I watched the show, of like just seeing how is someone getting prepared for someone else moving into the States. And she said the food was good. When she did have Lisa try to be, because he was right. She was hungry, and I would have been too. And he was like, are you hungry? Yes. Yes, I am. We can eat right now. And so kudos to him for knowing Paula enough to do that. And I think that, you know, we got a glimpse of her moving into the apartment. In the next episode, her being like, this is not going to be enough for me. You know, do you really want to get married to me or not? Because you didn't make space for me, which, you know, in the glimpse, it was like a little bit of 0 to 100 very quickly. But this is a Brazilian woman who is self-made. And she's 41 years old. Do we really expect her to not know what she wants? Because something tells me she can afford to buy her own ticket to go back to the States. To go back to Brazil. You know, homegirl, you know, I like Paula, if you can't tell. Homegirl orders like, I'm going to go ahead and ship what I know I'm going to want there. What's your address? I'm not, you don't have to buy it for me. I got it. I'm going to have it shipped here. Just get my packages. He was like, bring one suitcase. Paula's the kind of girl who was like, woman, who was like, he told me to bring one suitcase, but I'm going to bring what I think is necessary because I can afford the bag fees, okay? I can pay extra for the weight. So I need to feel comfortable, and it's just going to be what it's going to be. These two already know each other. Like, he knows how she is. She knows how he is. They've been engaged for 2 years. And of course, we're at the point to where while they may have been friends and dated for a long period of time, this is going to be probably their first foray into really like being in each other's intimate space. without an end date. As he pointed out, like he's picking her up and there is no return date to get her back to the airport for. And so this is going to be I think this is going to be a really, really good adventure for us to kind of watch with these two. I'm looking forward to it. I know we didn't get a whole lot of them into in this episode. I wish we had. They just had to give us some regular old scene of Catie drunk ass. But however, I'm looking forward to Paula Thomas' story. I know that it probably won't be the most exciting thing in the world, but I would rather, if you don't know, I'd rather have genuine, authentic stories versus the overly produced ones that we definitely are aware of if you watch 90 Day Fiancé in the past few years and a few seasons. So looking forward to those two. And I'm feeling pretty decent about these two, but I think the only question I have here is he ready enough at 31 years old to make the changes necessary for Paula? That's the only question I'm looking for. In other words, he needs a new apartment. He needs a good 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment, and that's going to be pretty pricey in California. And is he ready to make that step up? Can he afford to? And is he ready to make space for her? Is he really about that life as he might be ready for it? That's the main question that we've been presented with the information that we've been presented with. That's the main question I have at this point. So, all right, we're going to move on to a hit it or quit it. And that's going to be what I alluded to earlier a couple of times already, which is none other than Catie and Josh. I'm going to make this quick. The only scene we got in this episode was she's drunk. She woke up with a hangover. And she claims to not remember anything at all from the previous night. Are we surprised? Because I'm not. The only thing about that we got from the story is that they were supposed to be going to look at the apartment that she had rented unseen. We never got to the apartment in this episode because instead she wanted to ask questions about, well, like, how did I act last night? Did I offend anybody? Was I stumbling? And he was like, why are you worried about that? Because, of course, there are much bigger things to be worried about versus did you offend your friends, right? Did you offend other people? Were you too drunk? Those are not the questions that I think you need to be asking. He was like, you don't remember any of this? She's like, I don't remember leaving. I don't remember how we got back here to the hotel. I don't remember getting into bed. I don't remember most of the night. And here's the thing. The way he asked the question was like, well, do you think that you're more worried about it because, like, no, because you always worry about, like, how you feel after you've done these things and so forth with your drinking. So what is it with that? Or could this be like an OCD thing? And he kind of gave her an out. Because I mentioned before in my last video talking about Catie and Josh, she's 26 years old. He is 31 years old. I don't think he is someone who is aloof. Now, do I think that Josh also, despite as buttoned up as she may want us to believe that he is, he also is one of the guys who may out with her and then join her on a spontaneous trip to fool out with her in other countries. So, like, he has his own risky side of just being young, but I don't think Josh is here for the long term. I don't get that vibe, if I'm being honest. He was talking about, like, you know, certain behaviors are going to have to change if we're talking about getting married and, you know, at some point having kids and being more serious about things. And she was like, that seems like something that we're going to discuss in the future. I don't have any words for that right now. And they're not equally yoked. They're just not. Josh knows the conversation that he needs to have with Catie. We know them, right? What's the conversation, y'all? What's the conversation? We need Catie to be like, hi, my name is Catie, and I am an alcoholic. That's what Catie needs. All this stuff about like OCD and everything else, I said before, and I'm going to keep saying it. 2, 3, 4, 5 things can be very true all at the same time and exist with each other with no conflict. You know, she is experiencing alcoholism. When you're drinking to the point you can't remember things, that is a problem. Now, where I think the OCD might come in at is that maybe she's an overthinker, and she's like, you know, she made a comment about, and she said in the past how she may have heard of an outcome, or she said in her brain, there has been an outcome that was created and she doesn't have the proof to prove it didn't happen. And so until she has to prove it didn't happen or it did happen, she hyperfixates on that. Sounds like alcoholism still, or maybe a little bit of anxiety, and it could be OCD. However, it sounds to me that the bulk of her problem starts with her drinking alcohol. So I wonder, well, if you just switch over to a non-alcoholic version of your cocktails, you know, don't do real whiskey, do zero proof instead. Would you still have these same issues? I'm asking. And I'm wondering, I still want to know because I didn't see anything around as someone else did. I would love you to point it out. But is she medicating herself? Because she needs medication. Something tells me if she's diagnosed with a certain form of OCD or anything else, because I've already declared her to be neurodivergent, there's something going on there. Is she medicated? What is she doing about that besides drinking? And so Josh knows that he needs to have a serious conversation about her antics and her behaviors. And the way he's doing right now is giving her an excuse to keep with that BS. And as I said before, and I said again, she's too old and she's dangerous. She is very dangerous because all it takes is for her to do something to the wrong person. And now all of us are supposed to galvanize behind her. And that's just not something I'm here for at all. I think he knows this. I think that he's picking up all different signs. And while she calls it she thinks that, well, if I'm being honest about it, I can still do it. I appreciate you being honest about it. But if you don't have a willingness to change, then Josh should be asking himself, why am I still here? Because if she's not willing to change for you, which should not be the motivation for being honest, she should be changing for herself. How much do you really want to deal with this? Like, how much are you willing to make yourself look like a fool? I'm not going to digress. We are simply going to move on from them. We're going to move on for them. And so I'm going to go into Shea and Aanbelle. Let's talk about these two. So I like Aanbelle more and more. If I'm being honest, there is just something about grown folks' relationship and grown folks' love. And when I say grown folks, I'm referring to like that 50, 60 plus crowd of how they do things. And her and Shea seem to have like a really cute banter. Let me be clear, that those scenes and that over expression of his body and all that we got was not something I ever want to see ever again. Her grabbing his package and all that, I don't need to see those things. That's TMI. I don't care if they were 20 years younger or 30 years younger. Not interested in that. I think it's too much for what is supposed to be a quote unquote, well, 90 Day is not family friendly, but it's just too much for my eyes. How about that? So but it's interesting to kind of see that they're so comfortable with each other. We're not experiencing the insecurities that we had to deal with from other couples, especially ones of different age differences. So let's not pretend like when it's the older guy getting a younger girl, most commonly, or even vice versa, it's just all about, oh my God, would he like me for me? And I'm so nervous she's going to find a different man, or I'm competing with these younger guys, or, you know, in the male's case, it's a lot of, I'm using my money to, you know, buy this girl. So therefore, she should just be into me because of my money. You know, even though we do not both know under normal circumstances, if it wasn't for your money or your resources, you just aren't a looker, dude. You know, like, but we're not really getting that vibe. I'm not getting that vibe. Let me speak for me. I'm not getting that vibe from these two. Like, she's 54. She got the wrinkles. She had, and all that. She's older. He's a big guy. He knows what he is. And I really want to make a point before I get into the topic of this couple for the video of, like, I appreciate grown folks love. I like the banter, and I'm liking that pretty much what I think I'm going to be able to expect from their situation this season is going to make sense to me. So we see that they're getting up in the morning, they're headed home. And now Annabelle's getting to see a bit more of Kentucky, and, you know, she's in the big truck now. And we learn throughout their scenes that Annabelle doesn't have a lot of the luxury conveniences, and lives in a home that has all the people in there, all of her family members, probably of different generations. And also we learn that Annabelle truly is the type of woman who wants to make her husband feel good and also take care of her husband. They joked about it being a little bit too motherly. However, until I hear Annabelle complain about that or Shea complain about that, listen, I don't know where Shea gonna find another woman who gonna do what she doing, but let me tell you something. Annabelle is gonna keep her man. It's gonna keep her man. Now, we don't know her history. We don't know if she's divorced. We don't know anything really about Annabelle like that. However, I know enough to know that this is who she is. Annabelle is like, listen, I don't got me a good ticket, and this is where I want to be. So we're going to make this do what it do. And so I appreciate that, just to be clear. And of course, we get a little bit deeper into the nuances of Allison and Shea, right? So Shea had already, we saw, cleaned up his place to the best of his capabilities, because I'm sure that Annabelle may have a different level of cleanliness, like how I might have a different level of cleanliness. But he did his part in terms of making sure the home was prepared for her. And he knows this about her. He knows that as far as the dogs being on the couches and all that kind of stuff and having dog hair everywhere, it's not something that Annabelle wants. I have dogs, and I don't want dog hair off my place. So my dogs know what sections of the house to not even get on and to be a part of, right? Like, you know, so I get that concept when you just have a different mindset about how you prefer to live. And Allison, his daughter, who he describes as being like the ringleader a bit and the more forceful, authoritative one in like amongst his children, she decides in her mind that Annabelle is not going to just be her dad's wife, but she's competition. So what does Allison do? Allison goes into her father's house next door, lets in the dogs, lets in her 2 kids, brings toys all over the place, and essentially just messes things up in an effort to quote unquote greet Annabelle into coming home. Now, of course, you and I both know this had nothing to do with greeting Annabelle. This was a tactic, right? To say, I have a goal to get you to want to go home in 90 days, because if my father is doing for you, he can't do all that I need him to do for me, This is all this is. We've seen this storyline before between, you know, I know this happens it can happen in any culture. However, we normally see a well-off white father and his entitled white daughter. And I know color isn't a part of it, just something we see on the show more often than not, where there isn't any boundaries. It's more of this, I'm just going to throw money at it to fix the problem. And you're not really addressing the problem the way you need to be addressing the problem, right? And so Annabelle, we can already tell it's not going to be down for the count on this. She ain't. I can tell you from how when Annabelle walked in that house, she was already frazzled. And she was frazzled in a way in which, okay, I see you. And V, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm going to show you the picture of it, how she came in the house. She came into a house that had dogs jumping on top of her, kids running around, toys everywhere. And then, to be fair, Allison and Annabelle greeted each other very warmly. Annabelle was very excited to meet everybody. Like, she didn't come in like, oh my God, like she didn't put on the show, right? This wasn't her time to say, I'm going to make a scene for the camera. This is the type of grown folks behavior that I would expect for someone in her 50s, right? Like she came in like, I want to meet the kids. And of course, my kids can't do no wrong. The little girl wanted to meet Annabelle. She's like, who is this Filipino woman touching me? I don't know you. You're too dark. Okay. And so, and of course, the little girl ran away from Annabelle. But of course, she's just meeting her for the first time, right? And of course, I think Annabelle was really excited. And of course, we get this moment where Annabelle's like, your daughter just ran outside. Your daughter just ran outside. We all know that was, right? There was more to that. Your daughter ran outside. She was like, you ain't gonna get your child. So that's what this is. You that kind of mama. Oh, okay. So you did all this shit for me. Okay. Allison don't even realize Annabelle ain't no weak woman. I think Annabelle is ready for the shits. Do you hear me? I truly do. And so Annabelle had me cracking up because as long as she was trying to fold that blanket, like, oh my God, when y'all going home? She definitely was like, she was doing the same thing that I would have done. It's so much mess around. Let me just fold something. That's how I am. I just need to fold something. I need to do something. I need to, my nerves, right? And so, of course, Shea wants to show her the rest of the house. So she sees the kitchen and we find out that Annabelle is not used to like a real kitchen. She doesn't have when I say real kitchen, like she doesn't have an oven at home. She doesn't have what we would know to be a traditional stove back home. So for her, there's a level like enamorment of like, hey, this is a big house for me. And this is a lot. And this is definitely going to be a huge adjustment for her. We know this. And I think that she, obviously, after 6 years of being engaged, she kind of had a good idea as to what she was coming into. And we go into his bedroom, which is a mess. And I don't mean like, I think the kids had jumped on his bed before they had got there. However, it looked like that it really was a mess in terms of deer heads being pretty much on every single wall. And I was just like her, like who wants to be around dead animals staring at me while I'm trying to watch TV in bed or have an intimate encounter with you? That doesn't sound like sexy time at all. That doesn't get any juices flowing. No, I'm not trying to no, I don't care. You had the moment. I'm glad you remember being a redneck, as he called it. Not sure what we're supposed to take from that, but good. You were a redneck. But them things gotta come down. And something tells me the deer's coming down. So we get to this part in there where Annabelle and Shea are in the bedroom, and keep in mind, here we got Allison with a baby on her hip. And it's like, I'm watching y'all's every move, which just creepy. And he's like, hey, I got this watch for you. Hey, I got this bracelet, this chain for you. I have diamond earrings. And like he's showering her with gifts and making her, of course, just feel appreciated, right? And I think that while it may not have been necessary for her, I think that, of course, she appreciates that. Who wouldn't want to kind of just come in and have your partner just shower you with stuff? Even though we know there's going to be some real life things that they are going to have to get used to. I thought it was a very nice gesture, but we got this raggedy asshole in the background, Allison, who was like, you ain't never bought me no jewelry. You ain't buy this for me. And he's like, but you get plenty of stuff. Like, you had a house. And she's like, but you ain't never buy me no jewelry. Completely ruining the moment, in my opinion, for Annabelle. Now, Annabelle didn't feel no ways tired. But Annabelle peeped game. Because this is her first encounter, like, in person, physically, with this girl. And already, you're really doubling down on seeing Annabelle as competition. We would be expecting this behavior from Nicole, the ex, or some girl that Shea done slept with at the parties, right? Like who was a little bit too into his life at this point. But not from his daughter. Unless y'all two were screwing each other, I thought it was inappropriate that she was even in the bedroom, considering how touchy-feely they both are, and probably wanted to be at this point. I don't know why she was there at this point. And now I'm saying, well, the kid's getting tired, so I'm going to go ahead and go. And Annabelle's like, okay, you should have been gone. That's what I think we're all thinking. Like, hey, you could have been gone. I didn't need to hear your comments about why your father hasn't bought you jewelry in the 29 years that you've been alive. But okay. And then she's like, can I get some money? Again, it's tacky. It is inconsiderate because I think even with that, I don't think Allison asked for money because he only gave her $10. Like I saw it was just one folded bill for $10. And she didn't ask for the money for anything specific. We're going to go into now, follow me, into where I think Shea is going to be the biggest problem with this because we've seen this story before, right? So he gives her the $10 and then she heads out with her kids. And he is like, Annabelle is like, as soon as the door closes, why did you give her money? Now, we have to keep in mind, she knows a lot. Like, she has an opinion on this relationship. They have addressed this on the car ride here. Shea is trying to frame it as, well, both of you are just used to being the more assertive, bossy women in y'all's in y'all's circles, in your family structures. That's how she is. Shea is going to have to understand that your daughter ain't going to be doing nothing. And at least we don't believe she is. There's some weird folks out there. It is called Paducah, Kentucky. But I just don't believe that you and your daughter are screwing. I don't think that you and your daughter are into each other in an inappropriate level like that. So you're going to have to make room for your wife. And your daughter is not your wife. Okay? Now, she done laid up and had 2 kids as a single mama. And she's milking the hell out of that excuse of, oh my God, I have these 2 kids who I done laid up and had with somebody else who ain't around for reasons we don't currently know about. So can you help me take care of them? Because, oh my God, I can't do anything for myself. And it's so hard to find a job, or it's just so hard to make it in life with 2 kids. That's what this is. And Annabelle sees right through it. So she asks him, why did you give her money? She said, well, she just, probably needed a little bit for the kids, get them some food, some biscuits in the morning. Allison didn't ask for money for biscuits in the morning. Let me tell you why Allison asked for money in front of Annabelle. She did it as a power move. That's all that was. I wanted you to know that I could ask my daddy for money and he's going to give it to me. It didn't matter the amount at that time. It didn't matter what it was for. She didn't need the money. She didn't need the money all weekend. He was gone. She wanted to do it to prove to Annabelle that you're not going to come here and change anything. That's what that was. But Annabelle, I appreciate her maturity and said, I'm not going to sit here and argue with a little girl. I'm going to go ahead and talk to my husband about the relationship he has with his daughter. Now, we may see something different in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if Annabelle and Allison get into it, because Allison would initiate that, I'm sure, or go after her like that. But at this point, I'm going off what we have in front of us and what we've seen. And I'm like, see, this, that bullshit. And she's like, and Shea is like, well, she's my daughter. She's a single mom and she just wants to get business for the kids before church. See, already, when a person begins to make up their own excuses to a question that you ask, they already know something is off based off you simply asking that question to them. You already know this looks weird. You already know that you're doing too much for her. You already know what Annabelle is saying, that she is too dependent on you and that you should have drawn stronger boundaries. Annabelle jumped right into it. Is she paying rent at the house? Do you collect rent? No. Okay, well, that sounds like that she has a free house. In my culture, the parents should be being taken care of by the children, not the opposite. And I'm going to go into with Mallory and Rosh where that really hit me a little bit harder. It's not so relevant here, but she's right. Right? Like here in the States, we really are not used to, from a moral obligation, yes, like I'm one of those people where I am really in a position where I have to take care of my mother. And I don't always feel great about that, if I'm being honest. However, it's just what's necessary of my lifestyle at this time. And so, I definitely understand from Philippine culture, and we've seen this time and time again, Annabelle ain't gonna be down with you taking care of your child if she's not doing anything to help herself. And we're not seeing her do anything except feel entitled to whatever resources that Shea has to offer to her to make her life more convenient for her, which is only going to hurt her own development and growth. Point blank into the period. Where are them kids' father? I love that he bought a house for her. She's not paying rent. That's awesome. That means that she should have enough money saved up to do whatever the hell she wants to do. I wish, even at 38 years old, let my parents have a house I can move into rent-free. Damn this mortgage. Y'all can have paying taxes, like having deductibles and like with real property insurance, having to really go through storm damage and finding contractors. Y'all can have that adulting crap. But I digress. We already can tell that I don't think the problem, it's going to be interesting to see how Allison makes Annabelle feel and how Shea deals with it. Because I don't think it's so much as a fault with Annabelle in this case. This is a fault of Shea not putting down proper boundaries with his daughter. And I really do want to know, what do y'all think? Like, what do her siblings feel about Allison? Like, why is she getting this much help? Or what is her story? Was she a felon? Should Allison be on love at the lockup? What is her story? What is her story? Because, I'm not saying Shea can afford it. That's really besides the point. He could have a bigger house and a mansion on a whole compound. I do think that in this case, she's not respecting boundaries, and she thinks that she's the matriarch and the woman of this entire household and this family, and that isn't the case. And Shea is going to have to get that in order if he really wants Aanbelle to stay. Now, I'm looking forward to this next episode because we get some scenes where I want to know where this mail order bride comes from and how Shea takes up for her, if he does, because that's going to be necessary. And I'm interested to see, as relates to who we talked about earlier with Thomas and Paula, how Thomas is going to, like I told you earlier, how is he going to adjust that? With this situation, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I told y'all, Catie, I don't need to see her for episode 4. Hold her to episode 5. Because we're 3 episodes in with Catie and Josh, and we're only on their second morning of being together. We're not any further in their storyline. Already, they're focusing too much on that. So she's an alcoholic. Now what are we gonna do? Anyway, y'all, so that's the end of part 1. Part 2 is going to include the other couples, Debbie Amito, Mallory and Ras. It'll be a shorter video, of course, and we'll talk about them. We did not get a look at Asia and Maxwell, but they will be in the next episode with their prophesizing and their tongue speaking, so I'm looking forward to that. But I want to, of course, read y'all's thoughts so I can press a heart somewhere. What did y'all think about this? Am I off base? Maybe someone can provide more insight for me in terms of what does that relationship look like with how do you build boundaries with your adult children when you're inviting, your partner into their lives, right? Who isn't their parent? How have you all had to adjust that? I know what I have had to do. And I have my story with it, which of course, you adapt, right? I think it all depends on how the parents in that situation, how the adult, in my opinion, is making space for that new person. Because the kids, whether older or younger, are going to only follow the leader which you allowed them to get away with. And Allison, in Shea's case, is only doing what Shea is allowing her to get away with. If Shea was to put his foot down, because he holds all the cars, house is in his name. I'm sure he doesn't pay for the cars. I'm sure he's paying for daycares. I'm sure he's doing a lot to help out with her. And if he's not, he's doing enough to fill in the blanks from wherever she's not doing. And so she's only doing what her father allows her to do. The question that we need to see from Shea is he willing to make that change to keep Aanbelle in this capacity? We're going to see. We're going to see. I thank you for listening to my thoughts over here, Socially Single, because I ain't got nobody else to talk to. And I look forward to reading your comments. If you enjoyed this, please hit that thumbs up, not the thumbs down button, and subscribe for more videos that I'll be releasing in the future about this production. Talk to you soon. See you soon.